in
So, could the Conservatives lose control in half the London councils they hold? To answer that question and give us their New Year's take on the political scene, I'm joined by the Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton, Rupa. For the Conservatives, the Chipping Barnet MP, Teresa Villas, and for the Liberal Democrats, the former Hornsey and Wood Green MP, Baroness Lynn Featherstone. Welcome all of you. Teresa, first of all, your majority was slashed to 353 in the general election. How critical is it for you to hold on to that seat that the Conservatives win Barnet in the borough elections?
Well, obviously it's critical for the Conservatives to hold on to the council in Barnet because we want to save Barnet from the higher council tax they would get from Labour. We want to save Barnet from the fortnightly bin collections that they would probably end up with Labour, and we also want to ensure that we protect our suburban environment. In Barnet we have a council that's delivering new homes, but it's doing that without building high-rise in our suburbs.
Are you worried?
I believe that this is going to be a tough fight. We all know that. We've got a majority of one, but our council has a really strong record. It's providing good services. It's kept council tax down. It's kept all its libraries open, unlike its Labour neighbours, and we will fight on that record.
Rupa, if Jeremy Corbyn has a good night in May in London, how worried are you that momentum will start to seize control of the party in the capital?
I mean, look, I'm very optimistic about what we're going to do in London, and no scenario would be a bad thing if Jeremy Corbyn has a good night. I know a lot of people are uneasy about the easy council aspects of Barnet in particular, but I mean, momentum helped me a lot in my... I mean, remember, only as recently as 2015, Ealing Central and Acton was a Conservative seat. It was won by 200-odd majority. It was swelled to nearly 14,000 this time, and it was momentum activists, very hard-working people knocking on doors, that helped swell that majority for me. And recent polling in London shows, I think, a 25% lead, the stuff that came out in the autumn from Queen Mary College. So, I mean, who knows what might happen? No one predicted Trump, no one predicted Brexit, but, I mean, all the indicators are that we'll have a good night.
Lynn, Vince Cable's main message seems to be exit from Brexit.
It is.
Is that going to cut it in the borough council elections?
Well, I think it will be a mixture of national and local issues, and I mean, London is a really interesting sort of specimen because the Labour vote in London has been extraordinary, to be fair to Labour. But I think in the 2017 general election, it rose because I think there was a certain degree of belief that somehow Labour would save us from Brexit, where London is a very Remain kind of a city. But of course, Labour are not saving us for Brexit. Labour are supporting the Conservatives. So I think there are real issues as to whether it will come down to local issues. So in Haringey, where I used to be an MP, we have the Haringey Development vehicle where they put so much property into private hands. It's meant to be a partnership, but the thing is, local people are not going to get a look in. They're not going to be housed there, and that is housing is a massive issue in Haringey. So I think in Haringey we also have momentum. We have internecine war between momentum and old Haringey councillors.
Teresa, you also mentioned housing in Barnet.
Yes.
I mean, there is a problem with London boroughs with estate regeneration. Some councils are going to pay a price for that at the elections, aren't they?
Barnet's actually delivering more homes than any other
But
London
in
borough.
almost all cases of estate regeneration, there are unhappy households being moved out, or not as many council homes replacing the ones that are disappearing.
Certainly, it's not an easy process, but actually the regeneration plans in Barnet are going to enable it to deliver 29,000 new homes within the next sort of 10 to 15 years. That is hugely important, and it's much better to deliver these new homes through regeneration of these big estates than it is by building on our open spaces or the green belt.
Well, what's Labour's main campaign message going to be in London?
I mean, we've got a range of messages about housing. I mean, anyone who does a surgery I do on every week would see that it's not education anymore, it's housing. So, I mean, the Mayor's plans for having more than 50%, I think 60% of affordable housing, and allowing councils to build housing is one of them.
But of course the Mayor's not being elected.
True, yeah, no, it's our local... I mean, the thing is, we've got a Conservative government who's very clever at displacing cuts onto local government. So things like fortnightly collections...
They might argue that's called devolution, which is what most politicians want.
I mean, look, locally in Ealing, we've been a very sensible, it's not a loony left council as it was in the days of the 80s. We're campaigning on our record in Ealing. Again, we've seen in our borough that in my seat, 8 wards, we took all of them. If that had been a general election, you know, that it will be a wipeout.
Teresa, Lynn touched on Brexit. You're a prominent Brexiteer. Is that going to count against Conservatives in a Labour, in a remaining city, a city that voted Remain?
Well, the focus here should be on the local issues, the local councils. You know, if people's votes are driven by Brexit, I think that would be a real mistake. They need to look at the record of their local Conservative council and vote on that.
You mentioned the Haringey plans for housing. We've seen what happened with Carillion. How big an issue is private sector involvement in council services going to be?
Well, I think it is an issue, and I mean, I think that the bigger issue in Carillion in particular is what you see is when a project is put out to a large company and gets further away, then you get these terrible downfalls where they cannot cope and everything goes. And I think we have to bring things back to the local level. I think that's really, really important. But I just wanted to go back to the EU because I think, well, of course, councils run local issues. I think it will be an opportunity for Londoners to send a message on Brexit. I absolutely think it will be a message, and I hope the message, you know, comes to the Liberal Democrats, who are singly known for being, you know, pro-Remain. But I also think that a lot of people who voted Labour will be sending a message to Labour to say, come on, guys, there's going to be a vote in Parliament. We want there to be a vote for the people on the deal. There's going to be a vote in Parliament. Come on, Labour MPs, stand up for what you actually believe in. Don't just follow Jeremy.
Jeremy Corbyn's been quite clear on what he thinks of private finance initiatives after Carillion. So what do you think of the Mayor's plan to flog off the entire fleet of new Elizabeth line trains and lease them back to raise money?
I mean, look, I think Jeremy Corbyn said that Carillion has been a turning point, and we see what happens when these big companies bite off more than they can chew. They were running loads of stuff, every library in Ealing.
But do you think it's right for the Mayor to sell off these new trains?
I mean, the thing is, these people have to box clever now that things like the TfL resource grant has been massively slashed by Tory central government. So they've got this very clever sort of conjuring trick where they cut money from the centre, and then someone like the Mayor is boxed in, they have less options, so they have to think imaginatively.
Can I ask all three of you, what are your predictions for the coming year about what the big stories are and what is going to be the main issue?
I think Brexit will still dominate, regardless of what we're doing in our local areas. I think Brexit will dominate. Housing will be the underlying issue that people really, really care about because we've reached crisis level. Those are the two issues I think will dominate.
Teresa?
That will be a significant issue. I'd actually like to see all three parties working together to make a success of Brexit. But I also want to see progress on environmental matters, such as taking action to reduce our dependence on single-use plastics, continuing to clean up our electricity generation system, and really doing something to improve animal welfare as well, which is a particular subject that I'm focusing on.
Rupa, briefly?
Yeah, I'd agree. Brexit, I mean, again, seats like Battersea makes Wandsworth in contention for a borough that we could take. It hasn't been Labour since 1974, I think. I'd agree. Air quality, things like that. Public transport is always a thing. I mean, in a seat like mine, we've got lots of big projects coming our way. Crossrail, that's meant to be speeding up in 2018. Hope so. It seems to be going faster in East London than in the West.
Whether the voters have got the stomach for yet more Brexit for the next 12 months is something we'll have to find out. But I suppose all three of you are going to be looking very eagerly at the results of those elections in May. At this point, I'd just say thank you very much indeed for coming in and talking to us tonight. I'm afraid we've run out of time and I'm going to have to stop there. So thank you to all my guests tonight, to Harriet, to Rupa, Teresa and Lynn. I'll be back right at the beginning of February. Until then, good night and thank you for watching The Late Debate.